terrorizing my community, and my tax dollars are paying for it.
Chaos erupting in Little Village today between Chicago police, protesters, and immigration agents.
America, Chicago has officially become a war zone where federal agents get shot at for trying to enforce our immigration laws. An unknown gunman opened fire on ICE agents in Little Village, then fled like a coward while protesters threw bricks and paint cans at federal vehicles. But here's what's really sick. The same people complaining about ICE terrorizing their communities are living in the neighborhoods where innocent people are getting murdered in broad daylight. Brandon Mohawk Johnson has turned Chicago into a sanctuary city for criminals while making it a death trap for law-abiding citizens and federal agents.
Those that call his community home say they've had enough.
People are being taken. Our neighbors are being kidnapped.
What is up, guys? Tyson De La Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. These lefty loonies are more upset about stopping crime than they are about the fact that their own neighborhood has become a murder zone where you can't even conduct business without risking your life. While they're protesting immigration enforcement, Brandon Johnson's failed policies are getting people killed. Let me break down how Chicago's failed policies created a complete disaster. Brandon Mohawk Johnson turned Chicago into a sanctuary city, flooded it with illegal aliens, gave them free benefits, and told them that they'd be protected from federal law enforcement. The result? Absolute war zone, where criminals feel entitled to attack American law enforcement with impunity.
Border Patrol was conducting immigration enforcement operations in the area when tensions escalated. The Department of Homeland Security claims there were even shots fired at agents.
The Department of Homeland Security says Border Patrol was carrying out immigration enforcement in the area when an unknown male driving a black Jeep fired shots at agents and fled the scene.
When you create a sanctuary city and tell criminals they're protected from immigration enforcement, this is what happens. An unknown male in a black Jeep opened fire on federal agents who were just doing their job, then fled the scene like the coward that he is.
An unknown number of agitators also threw a paint can and bricks at Border Patrol's vehicles.
But this isn't just about one shooter. Multiple aggregators threw paint cans and bricks at Border Patrol vehicles, and we've seen this over and over again. This is what Brandon Johnson's policies have created, a hostile environment where foreign criminals feel that they can attack American law officers without consequences. Now, let me use the interviews with these people to contradict their narrative about what's really happening in Little Village. These lefty loonies are more upset about ICE doing their job than they are about the violence destroying their own communities.
It's very clear. They came out the vehicles, pointed weapons, and they used tear gas at people.
Listen to this alderman claiming that ICE agents came out the vehicles pointing weapons and used tear gas at people. But he's conveniently not mentioning that somebody shot at them. He's more concerned about agents defending themselves than he is about criminals attacking federal agents.
Agents are seen throwing an object out the car window into a crowd before a loud bang goes off, followed by smoke.
They unleashed a flash a flash grenade.
This protester claims they were protesting peacefully when agents deployed a flash grenade. Really? Really? Throwing bricks and paint cans at federal vehicles is not peaceful. Shooting at law enforcement officers is not peaceful. The mental gymnastics these people do to defend criminals while demonizing law enforcement is absolutely insane. This shooting isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a growing pattern that Brandon Johnson's sanctuary policies have encouraged throughout Chicago.
The Department of Homeland Security saying a suspect shot at agents from a car window on Saturday afternoon. How scary is that? Before this person sped away from the scene, that shooter is still at large. And it's only the latest in a string of attacks targeting border and immigration authorities. According to the DHS, death threats against ICE officers are up 8,000%.
According to DHS, this reflects a growing and dangerous trend of violence and obstruction, with increased assaults targeting federal law officers during operations over the past 2 months.
A Chicago police officer who had been called to the intersection for crowd control was hit by a car. He was taken to the hospital to be treated.
The situation is so chaotic that even local law enforcement is getting hurt. This is what happens when you create a hostile environment against law enforcement. While ICE agents are getting shot at, a federal judge just made their jobs even much more dangerous by issuing an injunction that restricts how they can defend themselves.
The federal judge has banned federal immigration agents from using force against protesters and the media.
Federal Judge Sarah Ellis banned immigration agents from using force against protesters and the media. So, while criminals are shooting at ICE agents, the judge is telling the agents that they can't defend themselves against hostile crowds.
Judge Ellis said, quote, "I don't find the government's version of events credible," after lawyers for the Trump administration argued tear gas and use of force was necessary during raids in Old Irving Park, Evanston, Little Village, and other places. Quote, "The use of force shocks the conscience."
But apparently criminals shooting at federal agents doesn't shock their conscience at all. This is the backwards thinking that is destroying and collapsing Chicago. Now let me tell you what's really happening in the same neighborhood where people are complaining about ICE enforcement. While these protesters are worried about immigration agents, innocent people are getting murdered in their own community.
Now, it is a 63-year-old man and a 25-year-old man who have died from their injuries in this armed robbery.
A 63-year-old and a 25-year-old man were shot and killed during an armed robbery at a jewelry store near 26th and Springfield, the same area where people are protesting ICE enforcement. The offender ran outside with merchandise while two men chased after him, and he shot both victims dead in the middle of the street. The surveillance video shows the offender pulling out his gun and shooting both victims in the middle of the street with traffic all around. This happened in less than a minute from entering the store to murdering two people and fleeing in a white SUV. Yet these people are complaining about ICE while living in a neighborhood where you can't even buy jewelry or get groceries without getting killed.
People terrorizing my community and my tax dollars are paying for it.
Alderman Byron Sicho Lopez says he asked agents for warrants and identification after hearing they attempted to detain a man in a vehicle with a child inside.
The hypocrisy of these Little Village residents is absolutely staggering. They're more upset about ICE agents arresting criminals than they are about innocent people getting murdered at local businesses. The community leader is talking about maintaining the peace and a moral high ground while people are getting shot at jewelry stores and criminals are attacking federal agents. What peace? What moral high ground?
They unleashed a flash band, a flash grenade upon me that landed a couple feet away, where there was also a family in a vehicle. And the family in the vehicle had a 6-year-old son.
They're complaining about flash grenades affecting 6-year-olds, but they're not complaining about criminals shooting at federal agents in front of children. They're not complaining about people getting murdered at jewelry stores where children could witness violence. The priorities here are completely backwards because Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker have created a culture where criminals are more protected than law-abiding citizens. Chicago residents in this neighborhood, maybe it's time to move. Maybe it's time to accept the fact that Brandon Mohawk Johnson has failed your city. Maybe these aldermen who are getting paid $150,000 a year should stop complaining about ICE enforcement and start addressing the real crime that's destroying their communities. The jewelry store killer fled in a white SUV and nobody's in custody. So we have a murderer running free in the same neighborhood where people are protesting ICE agents for trying to arrest criminals. Does that make sense to anyone? These aldermen who should stop complaining about federal agents doing their job and start addressing why their neighborhoods have become war zones. But that, my friends, would require admitting that Chicago policies have failed, and they'll never do that. Brandon Mohawk Johnson has turned Chicago into a sanctuary city where criminals feel protected and law-abiding citizens live in fear. ICE agents get shot at for trying to enforce immigration law, while jewelry store owners get murdered for trying to run a legitimate business. America, Chicago has become a perfect example of what happens when liberal policies completely fail. Brandon Mohawk Johnson and J.B. Pritzker have created a city where ICE agents get shot at for doing their jobs while innocent people get murdered at local businesses. The same neighborhood where people are protesting immigration enforcement is the same neighborhood where you can't safely conduct business because of violent crime. The hypocrisy is staggering, but it's absolutely predictable. When you create a sanctuary city and tell criminals they're protected from federal law enforcement, you don't just get more illegal immigration, you get more crime crime of every kind. When you demonize law enforcement and celebrate criminals, you create an environment where violence becomes normal. Chicago residents in the Little Village need to wake the freak up and realize that the real enemy isn't ICE agents trying to arrest criminals. It's the criminals themselves and the politicians who protect them. Maybe it's time to move. Maybe it's time to vote differently. Maybe it's time to accept the fact that Brandon Johnson has completely failed this city. But again, that would require admitting that liberal policies don't work, and these people would rather live in a war zone than admit that they were wrong about sanctuary cities and defunding the police. The jewelry store murders proves that the real safety threat in Little Village is not immigration enforcement. It's the criminals that Brandon Johnson's policies have protected. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.